everyone! Today we're going to discuss the best moments of Groot and Baby Groot in the MCU. If you liked the video, be sure to leave us a like and subscribe to the channel to not miss out on any future content regarding your favorite movies. Without further ado, let's get started. When the Guardians show up on the distant world called Nowhere to undertake an exchange with Tannelir Tivin, they encounter a few raised eyebrows from the local population. Because Nowhere is also known for being a hotbed of illegal activity, Star-Lord advises the gang to be extremely careful when a group of kids gets closer, misinterpreting them as young robbers. Some of these young children are taken aback by Groot's massive stature. Groot, with a gracious heart, crouches down to a young girl and generates a flower for her from his living right hand. The act of compassion instantaneously separates Groot from his associates, disclosing to watchers unbridled compassion within him that the other Guardians, at least during this point during the course, often seem to try and contain. Astonishingly, director James Gunn demonstrated on Twitter that the motivation for this incident was an homage to the 1931 film Frankenstein, wherein Frankenstein's beast trades flowers with an adolescent girl by a lake. This distinction between the two sequences is that the image from the classic film comes to an end in a much grislier fashion, in which the beast ends up killing her. While this scene is short and simple and quick to ignore, it encapsulates Groot's delicate gallantry. Another relatively short but unforgettable Groot portrayal in Guardians of the Galaxy takes place during the final confrontation between Xander, assisted by the Guardians, and Ronan the Accuser, a Kree lunatic pinned on destroying the Xandarian racial group. When the Guardians approach the Dark Aster, they unearth that it lives up to expectations. They can hardly even see where they're progressing. The Guardians can barely manage to see their environment when they contact Ronan's crews. Groot rapidly tries to resolve what might have been a tense situation for the team. He discharges a ripple of spores, an ample supply of luminescent microbes, each glistening with a toasty, soothing yellow brightness, by retaining out his hands. While the glistening fireballs strongly resembled Fireflies, they popped up to be more of a portion of Groot's tangible soul. It's a tiny thing, but without that illumination, the squad could have perished on deck the massive Kree vessel. At the very slightest, it could have contributed to the deaths of thousands of people on the globe further below. It has little influence on the content of the movie, like the flower, but it's presumably among the first things anybody recalls about Groot in Guardians of the Galaxy. A beautiful sequence that tends to leave the spectator as in amazement of Groot's bizarre alien compassion as the Guardians themselves are. After having survived the Guardians' assassination plot, Ronan is paused from trying to kill Drax the Destroyer by Rocket, who travels his ship straightforwardly into the Dark Aster, momentarily expelling Ronan from the equation and seriously damaging the Dark Aster itself, causing it to plunge forward into Xandar's ground. With Drax and Rocket badly hurt, and the Guardians hold up aboard the falling debris, Groot makes the choice that identifies him as a hero. Groot, seeing his friends in jeopardy of not having survived the impending effect, encircles them in a puck made of hundreds of branches, prolonging them into a barrier protection realm about his friends, trying to shield them from the crash's influence, understanding that he will take the repercussions. Groot, on the other hand, is unlikely to survive. When Rocket acknowledges this, he breaks down in tears and pleads with Groot not to do it. Curious to know why he's willing to sacrifice himself, Groot wipes a tear from Rocket's eye and replies devastatingly, modifying his trademark sentence from "I am Groot" to "We are Groot." It's the juncture at which the Guardians become a family. They may formally join forces to share the strength of an Infinity Stone, but Groot's compromise and proclamation of the five of them as a single entity are the fire-up for the team's establishment. Groot generates the world through a solitary act of generosity and affection in the face of his execution. It's a lovely scene for the original Groot, showcasing the true scope of his unselfishness. The scene directly following the collision, in which the Guardians start to reclaim their parts, while Rocket retains a portion of Groot's fragmented remnants, is equally touching, intensified in no minor portion by the 5 stairsteps singing "Oh Child," which continues playing on Star-Lord's player as a result of the collapse. Of course, Groot isn't dead, but he doesn't stay alive in the Guardians of the Galaxy. While he withstood the Dark Aster's collapse, it was only since his life form can regenerate itself from whatever tree branches are left, which means the Groot we are seeing in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is the adorable Baby Groot. After trying to take people back to 1980 to demonstrate Ego's association with Meredith Quill on Earth in the opening chapter of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, James Gunn continues to treat fans to a pretty standard action set piece. In return for Nebula, the Guardians are defending some Annulax batteries from an intergalactic monstrosity. A large percentage of the battle, nevertheless, takes place entirely on the fringes, with the camera choosing to focus on Baby Groot. who inserts into Quill's sound system and starts dancing all across the field of battle to the melody of Mr. Blue Sky by Electric Light Orchestra. And it's warm and invitingly adorable and extremely funny. While it may have seemed to be just an enjoyable prank to frame the opening sequence around, this pattern helps set up the complete movie, both sonically as Groot's humorous shenanigans take up the bulk of the room while the grave events happen around that, and also thematically, as numerous Guardians, especially Gamora, conveys parental sentiments towards Groot, raising concerns that he could get seriously injured during the battle. This not only tends to reflect Baby Groot's new relationship with the remainder of the squad, but it also sets in motion the movie's overarching theme of the interaction between parents and children. Gamora's unbelievable combat abilities are witnessed by the Guardians in their first gathering on Xandar. While Rocket and Groot try and capture Peter, Gamora manages to stand in their way, and they fight her as well. While Groot was holding her, she rapidly amputated both of his arms. Groot's compassion intended that even when she badly wounded him, he seldom laid a twig on her. It's almost as though he refuses to abuse her, even though he could eventually stop her if he wished to. This is another illustration of Groot's readiness to compromise himself to benefit the team. Being kept locked together in the kiln is what originally draws the Guardians together. They concoct a flee approach, but it will necessarily involve some team cohesion, which they are just not used to. Groot strolls mutely toward the guard building in the background, while Rocket is seated at the lunch table with Peter and Gamora. Rocket tries to explain the comprehensive plan and their duties, telling Groot that he requires him to get a Quarnyx battery, but it should be the very last component of the strategy to be conducted. Rather than picking up the battery last, Groot tries to pull it out first, potentially triggering an immediate and urgent shutdown, and pressuring them all to act rapidly as chaos starts to break out in the captivity. It was almost a screw-up, but it tried to force the Guardians to collaborate, preparing the ground for their greater cooperation. The countless mid-credits scenes in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 helps demonstrate the progression of several years between that movie and Avengers Infinity War, which was a year away at the moment. Groot here shows up as a teenager in one of them. His room is a terrible mess, and he's transformed into a grumpy twerp. He spends most of his time playing computer games and rotating his eyes whenever Quill comes in and acts like an authoritative figure. Groot would demonstrate in Infinity War that notwithstanding his attitude, he may still be courageous, but that was still a huge way off. When Quill makes a complaint about Groot's space, Teen Groot calls him boring, and Quill admonishes him for wanting to play that mind-numbing game, a portable video game. At the very slightest, the scene is unforgettable for taking Groot's restarted lifespan to its natural next step. And the joke keeps going in Avengers Infinity War, where Groot can still be seen playing these games and spouting off to the other Guardians. It's impossible to know for sure what Groot says in the Infinity War incident, but it engenders an emotional reaction from everybody engaged. Any parent who has ever stated anything along the boundaries of, "Put that aside now, I don't want to inform you once more," will probably appreciate this edition of Groot, who's not in the film much and just hardly seems to respect, but plays an important role. Groot's first presence in Guardians of the Galaxy is a parody, set up by his closest buddy and roguish companion, Rocket Raccoon. The viewing public cannot see the pair when they first show up. The initial point of view is through Rocket's eyes, as he analyzes and insults people walking around a public sphere on the planet of Xandar. The revelation that the person speaking is a humanoid raccoon is entertaining enough, but it's followed immediately by the discovery that Groot, the individual Rocket has been attempting to speak with, is a huge human-looking tree bowing over to drink water from the fountain in the center of the square. It's a wonderful way of introducing these characters, and the resulting action scene only adds to it, as Groot illustrates his inability to comprehend genders, encapsulates his soon-to-be commander Peter Quill in a gigantic sack, and bemoans the slight reduction of his hands at the hands of the warrior assassin Gamora. If first perceptions are something, Groot makes his milestone, with the viewing public keen to discover more about this powerful, yet oddly angelic, tree. That's it for today. What is your favorite Groot moment? Did we leave out another funny or heartwarming scene? Let us know in the comments down below. Be sure to leave us a like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe for more content on the biggest upcoming blockbusters. Until next time,